Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be looking at Class 10 Geography, Chapter 7, Lifelines of National Economy. So in this channel, I'm planning on making an entire series on this chapter. Right now you're watching Part 1, which is Why Do We Need Transport? And in the coming weeks, we'll also be discussing Part 2, which is Road and Rail Transport, Part 3, which is Air Transport, and Part 4, which is Sea Transport. So stay tuned for that. So to understand the necessity of transport, we have to first look at the supply chain. And the supply chain is the movement of goods from raw material to industries to the retailers. So to take an example, let's take a table, a furniture piece, a dining table. So the raw material for this dining table is obviously timber wood or logs from a tree. And so from the raw material, it's moved to the industry. And through the manufacturing process, the raw material becomes a more useful good which humans can use in their daily life, such as a dining table. And finally, this dining table is transported to a retailer, which is a store like IKEA. And from there, consumers take this item to their house and they use it. So from each stage of the supply chain requires a mode of transportation. The wood has to be moved from the forest to the industry, and the finished product, which is the table, has to be moved from the industry, the factory, to the retailer. So obviously this requires a system of transportation, and this is known as logistics, movement of goods from each stage of the supply chain. So there's two key manufacturing locations: the supply location and the demand location. The supply location is the location of the raw materials, which could be the forest. And the demand location is the location of the market. So that's usually the retailers. And there has to be a mode of transportation from the supply location to the demand location. So transportation and communication are directly proportional to each other, and they're prerequisites for economic growth. In other words, without a dense network of transportation and communication, economic growth is practically impossible. So to illustrate this, let's look at this flowchart. For economic growth, it's essentially GDP growth. And GDP growth requires production of goods and services. And the production of goods and services requires a system of transport. So here you can see how economic growth and transport systems go hand in hand, and they're interdependent on each other. Transportation also generates employment. It's a job creator because when we're constructing the infrastructure like roads, bridges, rail, airports, and seaports, obviously we require manpower and human capital. So construction of transportation infrastructure creates jobs, which is highly beneficial for growing our economy. And in recent news, transportation has been highlighted and uplifted, mainly because in the union budget of this year, this coming financial year, 2022 to 23, the central government has tabled the PM Gati Shakti scheme, which is completely based on transport. And it's the ultimatum of this year's budget, and it's a plan to upgrade India's transportation infrastructure in a modern sphere. So there's three domains of transport: land, air, and sea. Land transport obviously takes place through roads, and air transport takes place through the sky, and sea transport takes place through the oceans. So land transport is confined to domestic purposes because obviously there's no roads between countries. But air transport and sea transport they can take the form of domestic transport or international transport, because we have domestic flights and international flights. And similarly in sea, we have inland waterways and ocean transport from country to country or port to port. So transportation obviously requires infrastructure. Road transport requires roads and bridges, land transport. Air transport requires airports. And sea transports require seaports and inland waterways. And this will be the next topic. So in each video, and for the rest of this chapter, it focuses on each type of infrastructure. So there's a subtopic on roads, there's a subtopic on rail, there's a subtopic on waterways, ports, and airports. So each of these types of infrastructure will comprise the coming videos. Part 2 will be about road transportation, so be on the lookout for that. And as always, thank you so much for watching this short video outlining Part 1 of Class 10 Geography Chapter 7, Lifelines of a National Economy. And until the next video, it's Nishal Tube signing off. Peace.